Welcome to PERT Test Taking Strategies Order of Operations. I'm going to be referencing blue rules and green rules, and if you're unfamiliar with what that means, then you should probably watch Adding and Subtracting, Multiplying and Dividing with Integers video before this one. Let's first look at this grouping of letters over here and understand what each letter represents. P represents parentheses, E, exponents, M, multiplication, D, division, A is for adding, and S is for subtracting. Notice the way I wrote it. I wrote it vertically, and I grouped multiplying and dividing together, and I grouped adding and subtracting together as well. But they definitely come after multiplying and dividing. Whenever we are multiplying and dividing, and we have different terms that are all separated by multiplication and division sign, then we're going to work in left to right order first. That situation doesn't appear right here in this problem, but down here it does. Notice we have multiplication, division, and multiplication all going on in this problem down here. We would work in left to right order first, multiplying -2 times a +3, which gives us a -6. We then carry the rest of the signs down and the numbers. We now would do -6 divided by 6 first before we multiplied. Even though the M comes before the D, it's only because that we have trained you guys to know the word PEMDAS, and it sounds better with multiplication coming before division. But it's always left to right order. So in this instance, we're actually going to divide before we multiply. -6 divided by a +6 would give us a -1, and then we would multiply that number by 4, and our answer would be -4. The same rule applies when we have a problem that has both adding and subtracting. Even though the A does come before the S, we still have to follow left to right order, just like you read. So going from left to right, the subtraction sign comes before the plus sign. So therefore, we are going to do 4 minus 7, which is going to give us a -3, and then we add that to 2. And then -3 plus 2, I'm going to follow my green rules, which are up here. Ask yourself, same sign, add the numbers? Or do I have different signs and I subtract the numbers? If I look, I've got a negative and a positive. I have different signs. So I'm going to subtract them, and I'm going to get 3 minus 2, which equals 1. I have to ask myself, is my answer going to be +1 or -1? Then you look to see which one is the bigger number. 3 is the larger number, therefore my answer is going to be negative. Let's get started on this problem down here. Whenever you first approach a problem, you're going to ask yourself a series of questions. Are my terms separated with a plus sign, or are they separated with a multiplication sign? Once you ask yourself those questions, you're going to follow these two rules. So let's first look at this problem and determine where do I focus my attention. That's where order of operations comes into play. I first have to look to see, do I have parentheses? And I do. I have parentheses here, I have parentheses here, and I also have parentheses on this guy. But when you cover up everything outside of the parentheses, you only have a number inside this one. So it really doesn't represent parentheses, it more or less represents multiplication. Same over here. If I cover everything else of the problem up and I just look inside those parentheses, then I just have a number. I have -6. And again, that means it represents multiplication. If I focus on just these parentheses, I notice I have two operations going on inside of the parentheses. So once again, I ran through PEMDAS, I found my parentheses, and I still have to go through PEMDAS again, because I have to look to see what operations do I have. I have addition and I have multiplication. According to PEMDAS, we multiply before we add. So we're going to first focus on a +10 times a +4. And I'm going to box that with a blue box because it represents multiplication. Since I'm multiplying these numbers, I'm going to follow my multiplication rules. I have a positive 10 times a positive 4. I always like to include the sign with the number because it makes it easier when you're carrying down all the rest of the problem. You know positively and confidently what sign should go here. So since I have two positives, that equals a positive. And I know 10 times 4 is a positive 40. So you would write the plus and the 40 in that blue box. Everything in the blue box now goes away and you are left with positive 40. Looking at the rest of the problem, you would bring everything else down exactly like you see it. So bring down the 2 and the negative 6 with that parenthesis minus 9 squared plus parentheses negative 7 plus 40. Notice everything that's in that blue box is now represented by positive 40. Now that we've rewritten our line, we go through PEMDAS again. Do I have parentheses? I still have parentheses. I have negative 7 plus 40. So since I have a plus sign that is separating these two terms, I'm going to follow the green rules. I box everything that I'm going to be combining in a green box, so it reminds me to follow the green rules. If you have a blue highlighter or green highlighter, that will help you during the test. Negative 7 plus 40. Ask yourself, same sign, so I'm going to add them. Different signs, so I'm going to subtract them. One is negative, one is positive. Therefore, I'm going to subtract the numbers. When I do 40 minus 7, I get 33. I just now have to determine, is it going to be a positive 33 or is it going to be a negative 33? That's when I look at the bigger number. The bigger number is 40 and he's positive, therefore my answer is going to be positive 33. Bring the rest of the problem down just like you see it to negative 6 minus 9 squared plus, and I now have a positive 33 inside the parentheses. But when you're looking at this, I have a positive 1 out here in front of the parentheses, and I know a positive 1 times 33 is going to keep that number at a 33. So I really don't need these parentheses anymore, and I can get rid of them. Now that I've rewrote the problem on a new line, I now have to start PEMDAS all over again. Do I have parentheses? I do, but remember these sets of parentheses only represent multiplication because there's only one number inside of them. So I no longer have to worry about parentheses in the problem because I have eliminated all of that from the problem. I now am going to focus on the E. E stands for exponents, and that's this guy right here. This 2 is telling me to take 9 and times it by itself twice. Not a negative 9, that's a subtraction sign that's separated from the 9. If I had parentheses around this 9 and the negative sign, then you would multiply the negative in there with it. But there are no parentheses including that negative sign, so he just is going to represent subtraction for right now. So let's put a blue box around 9 and the 2, and we're going to follow our blue rules when we combine those numbers. I know 9 times 9 equals 81. Two positives, when I multiply them, equal a positive. So when I rewrite this line over again, whatever's in the blue box is being removed and replaced with 81. Now that I rewrote the line, we're going to follow order of operations again. I already got rid of my parentheses, so I don't have to worry about those. Now I have exponents. I don't have any more exponents in the problem, so I can get rid of that exponent as well. I don't have to worry about him anymore. Now the only thing I should have left is multiplying and dividing, adding and subtracting. Looking down at our problem, I see multiplication right here. So I'm going to box those two numbers with a blue box. 2 times a negative 6 that would be a negative answer because a positive times a negative equals a negative number. So I'm going to first write the negative sign. Now I know 2 times 6 is 12, so I know that my answer is going to be a negative 12. Carry the rest of the problem down, everything outside that blue box, just like you see it. And then go back to the order of operations. Do I have any other multiplying and dividing in the problem? I don't. I only have a subtraction and an addition sign. And when it comes to adding and subtracting, I must do it in left to right order. So I'm going to subtract these two numbers first, but I'm going to first box them in a green box. So I know and remind myself to only follow the green rules. Look at my green rules. Do I have the same sign and I'm going to add the numbers? Or do I have different signs and I'm going to subtract the numbers? I have a negative 12 and a negative 81. Remember, we look at subtraction like a negative sign when it comes to the green rules. So since I have the exact same sign on both of those numbers, I'm going to add them. And 12 plus 81 is 93. Now I just need to remember, is that a negative 93 or is it a positive 93? Look back at my rule. Same sign means we add the numbers and we're going to keep the sign. So my answer is going to be a negative 93. Now I have another negative 93 plus 33. So I have an addition sign. He tells me to follow my green rules. So I'm going to box a green box around those numbers. And when I do that, it reminds me to follow the green rules. Ask yourself, do I have the same sign or do I have different signs? I have different signs. One is negative and one is positive. Therefore, I'm going to subtract the numbers. 93 minus 33 equals 60. I just need to determine whether it's a positive 60 or a negative 60. And I go back to my rule and it says different signs, subtract, which I did, but my answer is going to be whichever is the bigger number. So look at your numbers. I have a 93 and a 33. 93 is larger than 33, so therefore it's going to be a negative 60 as my answer. If you would like more practice working with the order of operations and the blue and green rules, then please go to emathlab.com, click on Basics, scroll down to Order of Operations, and then use the pluses and minuses tool. There will be several problems that you can work with, and hopefully you will become better and get that score on the PERT that you want. Thank you for watching.